Hi, hey, what's up? If you don't know me, I am kozii2. I'm part of Carl Entertainment's Generation 1 Cascade, and I drew and rigged my entire model all by myself. That's important because it means that I've played around a lot with a lot of different mouth settings, including doing VBridger stuff before, and just like creating my own mouth frames. I have a mouth frame guide that I made that's about, a 6x6 mouth frame guide. I'm so sorry. It's just what I prefer. Don't mind me. Anyway, but I have a problem. Recently, there's been a trend, of people seeming to think that their rigging is kind of bad or they can't reach the same, level of tracking quality as they can get out of VBridger by just using, like, a normal iPhone. And I think that a lot of that comes down to people not really knowing how to use the settings in VTube Studio and to make their tracking more sensitive, so they don't really get as much out of their tracking as they could be. So I decided that I was going to just sit here, no music, no nothing, straight up just a video of me setting up a model from scratch, and all of my tracking settings, and like explaining what I do and how I do it, and hopefully it will help people to try to get the most out of their tracking without using an external program like VBridger, because as much as VBridger is cool, and as great as it is that you can do things like mouth shrugging and chewing with your mouth closed and stuff like that, it's really not necessary. It's really not necessary to get the most out of your tracking. So for the regular user who's not trying to spend like $5,000 per model, it's a lot easier to just play with the settings. So, let me pull up. I did a fresh export of my model just for this. If I can remember which freaking thing it is. Oh god, don't mind me. This is completely unedited. I'm just chilling. I have too many models. Okay, here it is. So, you saw what my tracking looked like, fully set up. I'm just gonna hit the auto setup. And this is what my tracking looks like when my model first gets put in the program, which is not super great. You can already see an issue in that my cheek puff is permanently on, so immediately have to change that. So you basically open up this little person icon in the top left, and that will take you to your parameters. I usually turn off all of this like X, Y, etc. movement stuff because I just don't like it. I prefer to have my body like set in place. Then we just start scrolling down here and figure out where the heck the cheek puff parameter is because it automatically shoves it onto like the highest setting possible. Here we go. It's set to mouth smile right now. It should not be set to that. You could actually put like a blush thing here so you could blush when you smile. Technically I've got a blush that I can put here if I can find it. There we go, blush. So, you could set it to be blushing when you're smiling, and I usually make it so that it's like pretty far out there. So I'll blush a tiny bit, just a teeny tiny bit of blush, but not like a ton, you know? And I'll even lower the bottom floor. Basically, what I'm doing here is I am changing these two parameters on the left only. The top one is the maximum, the bottom one is the minimum of like how far you're pushing your parameters. So if I make this negative 0.5, then it's gonna have a wider range in between. So it might make it blush a little bit more. If I make it like 1, it has a smaller range in between them, and you can see this little red dot actually goes off the screen, so it's never really hitting this higher blush range point. So I kind of want to make it more like 0.5. Just to have a teeny tiny little bit of blush in there. This number that's next to the parameters, you're going to want to pay attention to because that is basically the number that is tracking currently. So anytime you make a face, like I'm smiling now, okay, so that hits 1.8. That's the maximum that it's going to hit. So if I want something to hit the absolute maximum, I would put 1.8 on the top here. But I don't want it to do that because it's blushing. Anyway, mouth tracking. Mouth tracking is the big one. Mouth smile and mouth open are the two parameters that you want to pay attention to. You can see that my mouth tracking isn't nearly as good as it was before, especially because my mouth doesn't close. Quick thing, if you like your mouth tracking how it is, you just want your mouth to close, just do that. Literally just make the mouth open, the bottom parameter here, 0.1, or even 0.05. That will close your mouth. And that's like an issue that I have a lot. I think it's because I have like big lips and stuff like that. But yeah, so I usually set mine to like 0.1. The top of this is, like I said, the maximum. So if you want to be able to hit the maximum open of your mouth parameters without really doing too much, without really like overly exaggerating your mouth motions, you might want to lower the top range. So I actually want to make it 0.8. And now you can see I get a lot more range out of my mouth motions even when I'm making the same mouth motions. I'm not trying to like open my mouth any wider or anything like that, and it still hits a higher range. Mouth smile is going to dictate if you're smiling or frowning. So if you notice that your mouth is smiling most of the time and you don't really get to frown, or like it's really hard to frown, if you see here, this is the range that I'm talking. Usually I'm stuck in between the 0.6 to 7.8-ish range on my mouth motions. I actually want to raise the bottom to like 0.35. And then immediately my base form is more of a neutral face, and I can frown a lot easier. So I hit a lot more range with my mouth motions. Same at the top, I usually lower that to increase the amount of frames that I'm getting out of all of my mouth shapes. I'm getting like way more tracking out of my mouth shapes like this. I actually, 0.9 seems better. So it'll take some adjustment. A lot of these numbers are not based on like what I'm doing personally. They're based on like your personal facial expressions. So you're going to have to play with them yourself. You're just going to have to play with the numbers. Don't worry, you're not breaking anything for playing with them. If you really dislike it, then just delete all your files from VTS and reinstall them again. Like just put the folder back in again, and then you can reset up from the beginning. You can go back to all the defaults, right? Not that big of a deal. I mean, it can be kind of annoying to redo all of the settings, but besides that, not that big of a deal. Just play with it. Trust me, it's not going to hurt anything. Just play with the numbers on the left because that's the easiest thing to play with. So that's mouth tracking. This is how I actually get most of the range out of my mouth tracking. A lot of people compliment a lot of my mouth forms and stuff like that because they think that my mouth tracking is pretty good. I'm talking really quickly so that you could see it transitioning between a lot of frames at once. But yeah, so that's how I get the most of my mouth tracking. Next, eye tracking. I usually make it so that my brows are a little bit more movable. They like move up and down a little bit easier. So I make this like a 0.8-ish or so. I'll make this like a 0.2. And you kind of like wiggle your face back and forth as you're doing this to see if it's hitting the range that you want. That seems pretty fine to me for height. So I just have to make sure that I'm looking at the brow height parameters on both of them. And then I make this one 0.8 and 0.3. Same thing with the form. The form is actually the thing that will make it look sad or angry. So I'm actually gonna want, usually how it's set up is the positive is your like sad kind of expression, and the negative is your angry kind of expression. So I actually want it to be a little bit easier to hit the angry, and slightly, just like a teeny tiny bit harder to hit the sad. Just a teeny tiny bit, right? And then you do the same thing on here, What did I set that as? 0.3. 0.3 on the bottom, 1.05 on top. And now it's way easier for me to hit like my angry expression and kind of like a, this isn't really a sad expression, so I can make myself a sad expression that's more something that I could toggle. So yeah, so that's just a quick way to make my brows look better. Another thing that I like to do, I don't know if you noticed, but my eye tracking was a lot more sensitive. So I usually go to IX and IY. That's your inner irises. So if you, I usually make them like 0.7, 0.6, I think. These ones you have to match both sides. I think I have like 0.6. You have to match both sides because otherwise it's gonna look a little weird. So I'm looking left and right. Before I get too far, I'm just gonna go ahead and change this to be 0.62. And you could kind of see that my eye tracking is already like a lot more sensitive. I actually might even make this like a 0.5, and it looks like somehow my OBS died. Anyways, so I made it 0.5. You can see that when I'm looking around now, my eyes are a lot more sensitive. You can probably even increase it more if you wanted to, if you're more into like a really sensitive range. Go for what you want. Honestly, all of this is just about your own personal comfort with your tracking. Let's see. What else do I need to change? You know how my cheek puff was put into my blush sort of with spile thing? You need to make yourself a new parameter. If your modeler hasn't done it for you already, they might have already done it for you. That is your cheek puff and hooks up to, usually it's also called cheek puff. God, I have so many parameters. Mine's called cheek. So you make that. That's for when you're like puffing your cheeks. Mine is kind of subtle, so it's not really that important, but it's good to have there and set up properly. Wait, did I change the mouth X? Oops. Oopsie. Cheek puff. So this one's supposed to be my mouth X parameter then. Whoopsie. Mouth. Tongue out. I do have a tongue too. You might have to set up your tongue to come out properly. I think mine is called blep. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you might have to set up your tongue to come out properly if you've got that. And then mouth X is usually kind of pre-set up, but same with cheek puff and stuff like that. It's usually pre-set up, but oh god, I can't even find it. Wait. X. There it is, mouth X. I forget that I can search these things sometimes. Alright, so mouth X is your side-to-side mouth wiggle, but if it does take a lot of effort for you to hit your mouth wiggle, I also suggest just like lowering these within the same range, and then you can hit your X positions a lot easier, so that's nice to have. Mouth or eye smile is another one. So there's eye open, which you can change if you're having a lot of issues with looking too sleepy, because I know that's a big thing that some people have issues with their model. You can check on this side what you're usually sitting at for your normal mouth open or eye open, and if it's like under the middle range, you might want to make the top portion smaller, and then it'll keep your eye open for longer, and it'll make you less sleepy. And you would have to do that for both of them. So it makes you look a little bit more awake. I don't really need to do that, I don't think, but it's good for people who maybe have their model looking a little bit too sleepy. I smile a lot, personally, so I actually have to increase the bottom range of this a lot to stop smiling as much. And I might even increase the top range to like 1.3. Yeah, that seems better for me. I smile too much. Your eye smile might be more or less obvious than mine is. Mine is a little bit subtle. Even when I close my eyes, it's not like super obvious or anything like that. But yeah, that's eye smile. So if you're smiling too much with your eyes, you can also change that. And that's most of the face tracking stuff for models. But I also prefer to have more movement. So usually, oh god, that looks strange. Usually models have a bit of good default movement to them, but I like to increase the range a lot so that I can hit my angles faster. So say I want to turn to the side quicker, like I'm not really turning that much. Think about it like this, right? You're usually sitting in one place for however many hours a day, and you're staring at one point in the screen. How much are you moving? I like to increase my sensitivity a lot on my body tracking and on my face tracking, because then if I move the tiniest bit, it'll be a bigger motion, and people will see more movement out of me altogether. So usually for like body motion X or head motion X or stuff like that, I will increase the sensitivity. So let's do face first. So face left to right motion is your X movement, your side to side. I'm gonna make it 15 and negative 15. And immediately you could see it moves way quicker side to side. I actually prefer 20, I think, on this model for myself. So like that. Up and down rotation, same thing. If you want your head to go up and down faster, you can make it smaller numbers, and that will make your head go up and down faster. Also, this is important. There's a lot of things that you can do with body motions that might be fun to play around with. For instance, I actually have my head motions set up to be opposite of my body motions right now. So instead of when I look up, my head goes up, it's the opposite. So it's actually like this, which looks a little bit weird right now, but once you get used to moving your body like that, it's a lot easier to control. That's a negative 20. It's a lot easier to control, and you don't have to worry about like looking like a weirdo looking out into space and stuff like that, right? But you can play with that, and you can see if you like the opposite kind of motion better or if you like the default motion better. For right now, I'm just gonna set it all as default. I'm actually gonna go 15, I think. I prefer to go higher on the up and lower on the down, because I like looking down more than I like looking up. I kind of want some effort if I'm going to look up that far. So there's that. You can do the same thing with like your left and right face motions, by the way. If you would like to, you can swap them so they're the opposite of your body motions. I think it's a little bit easier to swap the body motions if you want to do that, because then you're not like, your head is still moving the right way, you know? So let's see, X body rotation. Let's make it, I'm gonna make it a lot more sensitive, like I was doing. I'll make it like 17. So now when I look side to side, my body tilts the opposite direction, and you can see it's a lot more motion. Same thing with body up and down sort of movements. I'm gonna make it negative 20 on top. So now it looks like this. This is with opposite settings. This is kind of what I was doing with my head stuff and things on my other pre-set up model. I don't have all of my model settings flipped like this, but you can flip them. All it takes is making the opposite number negative. So this is -20 on top and +20 on the bottom. And then the other one was the other way. Same with Z rotation. This is when you tilt your head side to side. And make it 15, -15-ish. Flip this. This is closer to how I had it, more or less. Face lean is your tilt side to side for this. So I'm gonna go 20, I think. -20. So now I am getting way more out of my body motions. I'm getting way more out of my eye tracking. I'm getting way more out of my face tracking. And it looks like it's an entirely different rigged model, just from messing with the parameters. I think that's pretty much all of the parameters that I usually will mess with. But if you guys want to, definitely play with them more. See if you want to change anything else on here, because it's worth it to just like mess with. Also, this stuff, the movement config stuff, like I said, I don't really use this, but sometimes you might want extra exaggeration when you're moving in certain directions. So say if I increase the X movement like 20 or something like that, then I start, actually, interestingly enough, since my settings are opposite from each other, I kind of move in an opposite way. That's weird. Okay, there. This is more what I'm trying to say. You lean more side to side. But the downside to this is that it's moving your feet too. So instead of being a stationary setup position, you're moving your entire body side to side. Whereas this is if it's stationary. This is if there's no movement there. It's the same thing for the Y motions. And it kind of just makes you go up and down more. Z motions, I think. I don't actually remember what the Z motions do. Are the Z motions leaning in? The Z motions might be leaning in. I forget which ones these are. But the point is, right, that it will, however you're altering these settings, it's gonna make you, yeah, that is the lean in, interesting. It's gonna make your feet move around and slide and stuff. If they're not on screen, then it's really not gonna matter, but it's good to keep in mind. All right, so yes, that is how I set up a model. This is completely unedited. I'm sorry for like rambling and stuff like that, but I hope that this is a little bit helpful for people in trying to figure out how to deal with their parameters. The final thing that I wanted to mention is the new advanced Lipsync. So if you go back up to the top, there's a gear icon. You hit the gear icon, and then you scroll all the way down to the bottom. It's probably not going to look like this to begin with. You have to hit Lipsync type and advanced Lipsync, and then it'll have everything set up like this. You can actually you can calibrate the different mouth shapes. So it's basically A, I, U, E, O for the shapes, and then silence, however you look when you're completely silent. I find that this actually does increase tracking, but you do have to still play with the parameters. I will show you what it looks like when you calibrate this, but don't change the mouth parameters in just a second. So let me just calibrate this. Usually what I'll do is I'll try to make the mouth shape that I want it to be at and make a sound at the same time. So, E, okay, so now it's more calibrated, so you can see that there's a little bit of a difference in, I don't know what it is today, but my OBS hates me and it just crashed twice at about the same time period, so that's lovely. Love that. Anyways, so anyway, you may or may not be able to see the difference in my mouth tracking like this, but you will be able to notice if I go into this and I change the mouth stuff. So some riggers might tell you, oh, it's not going to do anything if you change the parameters while you're using the mouth tracking, but that's just not true because it makes a world of difference, and I tested it myself. So it was 1 on top, 0 on bottom, right? So this is me talking now without the stuff that's been altered on the parameter list. You can see that I have way less mouth features. I don't hit nearly as many frames. When I close my mouth is open because, you know, it's annoying like that. It does actually pay attention to not only your sounds that you're making, but the parameters on here. So change this back to 0.9 and 0.35. And then on the mouth open, 0.8 and 0.1 or something like that. I don't remember how to really had it at, but you can see that it makes a world of difference just changing those parameters a little bit. Like, it is a hell of a difference. So you have to change this. Even if you are doing the sound tracking stuff, you have to make the parameters different, because otherwise you are just not going to get as much out of your mouth tracking as you would any other way. Okay, anyway, so yeah, that's how I normally set up a model from start to finish, pretty much. There's also like expressions and stuff like that. I don't really want to do expression editing too, because I think this is already like a 45-minute or something video, and I'm not even editing it, so it's a bunch of rambling. But expression editor, create new expression. You basically just go through the list and you pick out whatever expressions you want. Usually they'll be well named by your rigger. You name it something, you hit save, and then you close this box. What? Cancel. There we go. You close that, you hit plus, you hit set unset expression, you pick yandere or whatever, and then you can set a key for it. Whatever key you want it to be. That's just one of my usual keys. So, and then you have an expression. And you can do this with anything. So if you want to make a sad expression, if you didn't have a sad expression included in something, you could say you go to your eye smile and you make sure that all of it is turned off so you don't smile with your eyes. You go to your brow form and you make sure that your brow forms are all in the sad position. You go to your, say, your mouth form, and you make sure that's only in the sad position. And then suddenly you have a much sadder expression to work with. So you can make your own expressions like this. Try it out. See if you come up with anything interesting, if there's any cool things that you can play with. Some things can be kind of funny, because you could technically make an expression that's like, what kind of expression am I thinking about? Like, your mouth is to one side, and your cheek is puffed, and you've got one eyebrow down, and then you've got one eyebrow lifted. You can make some funny expressions, so play with it. Yeah, okay. That's pretty much how you set up a model in VTube Studio. I'm sorry for the rambling. I'm sorry that I didn't edit this. It's my day off. I'm lazy. But I hope it helps. I'll put timestamps on it. If there's not timestamps, yell at me. Okay, bye!